with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, February 9th, 2021. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Donald Trump, ex-President Donald Trump, faces his second impeachment trial today in the Senate. First up, a vote on a motion to dismiss, arguing that former presidents can't be impeached. Meanwhile, new study shows that Pfizer's mRNA vaccine works against COVID variants. That's good news. Meanwhile, the House Democrats released their COVID relief bill. Those $1,400 checks stay at the previous income thresholds. $15 minimum wage is included in that same House bill. The CBO, Congressional Budget Office, scores it as adding to the deficit, which could help it pass in the Senate. Dems also push an Obamacare expansion, drop a work requirement for child tax credits. And down in Florida, a hacker nearly poisoned an entire city's water supply. ICE goes rogue, deports babies and children, among others, to Haiti against the Biden administration's directive. Meanwhile, civil liberty groups call on the new administration to drop extradition case against Julian Assange. The deadline looms. It's Friday. And Austin, Texas buys a second hotel to home the unhoused. And lastly, voting underway in Alabama's Amazon workers' bid to unionize. All this and more on today's program. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. Also joining me, as she does every day, although she's about to go on vacation in a couple of days, is Emma Vigeland. Hello, Emma.
Hello, Sam. Very, very short vacation. Very short vacation.
Very brief.
Yeah,
yes,
just very brief.
Yes, and the rest of us, well, not the rest of us. We're out. We're dividing and conquering, I guess.
Squad. Yeah.
Squad and tag team, and so the rest of us are going to go on vacation. By the rest of us, I mean two of us going on vacation this week. Folks can figure it out. The bottom line is like we are very close to achieving the 24/7 vision of this show, which is that we are on constantly. It's we're just passing the baton.
Right.
There's never a moment where we're not.
So
on
you
the ball.
sleep, you're off for 12 hours, I'm on for 12 hours, and then we never see each other again.
That's the plan.
Yeah, that's in my contract.
That's the plan.
That after 6 months, I don't ever have to see you again.
That's actually a stipulation that a lot of people make in their contracts.
Right.
However, that said, you can contractually get into an agreement to never have to see me again. Apparently, we can get into no such agreement with Donald Trump, the former president of the United States. He will be, I guess we won't have to see him today. And I imagine he probably will not show his face. He's probably ensconced in a bunker down in Mar-a-Lago.
Although he was called upon to testify, which he declined because he would have been under oath. And that would have been a show, though.
I have to say, I was a little bit surprised because I would have thought that, like, because he doesn't have Twitter, he doesn't have the ability to sort of like to put himself out there, as it were, that he would show up. But no such luck. However, we know that Donald Trump is in great spirits. He's not in any way upset about being impeached again. Not at all. And how do we know this? Because of the very trustworthy Corey Lewandowski, who is going to tell us that on the Newsmax program with Greg Kelly. Wow. Okay.
I'm doing well, thank you. Without divulging too much information, just before I came on, I was just speaking with the former president from Mar-a-Lago, and, he said, one, to wish you the best and thank you for all the hard work that you're doing here on this network.
I appreciate it very much to hear that from you, Corey. Not to drop names, but I saw him face to face yesterday at the golf course, and he said much the same thing. But I appreciate that very, very much. Yeah, he's, by the way, did you notice, as I did, his spirits? He's very, very upbeat. He's, he's raring to go, I think. Your assessment?
Well, the media will never tell you that. They'll say it's all doom and gloom and that he's miserable and he's hunkered down, but that's just not the truth. I
just want to point out that the media literally just told us that. Newsmax, I mean, I presume they consider themselves media, right? They're media.
Yeah, that or
it's
a propaganda arm.
But I mean, it's still media. It's not journalism necessarily,
yes.
but it is media. And they literally just told us that he was upbeat.
Maybe
Make sure they know I'm happy and loving life.
I'm loving it.
But
I'm recovering from the breakup well.
My personal favorite part of that is how Lewandowski, he said that he saw Trump and Greg Kelly has to go, well, actually, I hang out with Trump too. He was in good spirits when I saw him too, and repeated it twice.
That's also a tough question.
I'm in the clique.
I saw him yesterday and he was really upbeat. What's your take on that? All right, but let's go back and watch this.
He's raring to go, I think. Your assessment?
Raring to go where?
Well, the media will never tell you that. They'll say it's all doom and gloom and that he's miserable and he's hunkered down, but that's just not the truth. I have the privilege to talk to him a lot. He's very excited. He knows that this scam that's going on, this sham of an impeachment, is only going to hurt the Democrats because, at first he was impeached over a perfect phone call, and now the second time he's been impeached over a perfect speech at a rally, a political rally, something that I thought we had free speech in this country, a protection of the First Amendment. The media doesn't want to say that. They have done everything they can since he came down that golden escalator to try and destroy him, but he has fought back every day, and most of the media hate that.
A perfect speech.
Perfect. I mean, it achieved, I think, exactly what he wanted it to, if that's what the argument is. Perfect speech.
And you know how Lewandowski countered again with the I speak to him a lot.
Yeah, they were like in competition. Who's Donald Trump's best friend?
Yeah, who's closer to Regina George? Is it, Karen or Gretchen Wieners? That's a Mean Girls reference, but
I didn't pick up on that. But
and they're more than
I take your word for it.
The Psychotic Men. That's the sequel.
I mean, the fascinating thing is that they both know that Trump is watching. And they both are trying to impress him. And it really is like there's an audience of one. And I'm curious, what is Trump raring to go to or for? Or what is he? What does that mean?
I'm raring to not testify.
I'm raring to just not be impeached again.
I'm raring to sit in the golf cart as it drives me from hole to hole.
I'm going to make it all the way to the 12th hole today. I'm
to the
definitely
clubhouse
do
bathroom, raring to go.
I wasn't going to do this, but let's play that other clip of that guy. What is that guy's name from WorldNet Daily? Is it Greg Kelly?
Greg Kelly.
Yeah. Greg Kelly, when he is not trying to convince Corey Lewandowski that he also has a personal relationship with Donald Trump, and talking and basically, I guess Greg Kelly now realizes that with Lou Dobbs gone, there's like open field essentially for simping for Donald Trump.
Good.
But before he does that with Donald Trump, he's got to do it with mini Trump in Congress, who has also gone through not quite her own impeachment, but her own, I guess, she's been decommittified, as it were. Here is Greg Kelly, and he is practicing some journalism. He apparently has caught Marjorie Taylor Greene in a lie.
It's actually to step up and boldly declare your faith, share the gospel, and then truly live it and be the hands and feet of Jesus.
I'm sorry. I have to fact check you. I caught you in a doozy. You said a little while ago that you're just a regular person, and I just don't think that's the case. You're absolutely extraordinary, and very impressive to watch you, what you're doing, and I wish you luck and I wish you safety. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, many thanks.
Thank you, Greg.
There you go. That was
super uncomfortable.
I think it's very sweet. Valentine's Day is coming up, and that was he was both practicing journalism and providing a compliment.
Yeah, a compliment. I mean, either to get her back on the program or get her to go to dinner with him. I wasn't aware.
You're a normal Christian nationalist who inherited a construction company.
Yes, who's just an average person? I don't think so. I think you're something a little bit better than that.
I think she's got superpowers. Maybe right. She's some sort of, she's going to be in the end like Supergirl in that outfit, but instead of the S, it's just a big Q.
There you go.
On her, emblazoned on her outfit.
He's it's Greg Kelly's just calling him like he sees him.
Greg and Marjorie. Greg and Marjorie together.
He reports.
Marjorie.
You decide. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about what is in the Democrats have now released their bill in the House, and the Congressional Budget Office has released its so-called score on what a $15 minimum wage will mean for the federal government. And the $15 minimum wage didn't get the greatest score from them. There's reasons for that. But it may be a score that actually keeps $15 minimum wage in the game. We'll be back on more of my metaphors after this. I thought that was a pretty good metaphor. Folks, today's show sponsored by Grove. Grove.co. Not grove.com. Grove.co. What is grove.co? It is essentially like a marketplace. I use an app for it. You go on there and it gives you the widest array of natural cleaning products that A, you could find anywhere, or B, that you could imagine. Folks love, I don't know. I imagine a lot of people are like to use natural cleaning products. I certainly do. I got into the habit with the kids, and I also, with the kitties, the cats. As much as they're the bane of my existence on some level, I want to keep them healthy because...
Yeah, and some of those non-natural cleaning products are toxic.
They're toxic, and... I don't find that they work any better, frankly. For me, and of course, there's other considerations. In my case, smells. I think I've told people my two favorite products that I get from Grove. Although I got during the whole mad rush, that was my secret for getting toilet paper, was at Grove, and it's all natural, toilet paper that they. I don't know if they recycle, but it's like bamboo and stuff like that. But they have all sorts of products like that. For me, this is where I get my 7th generation hand soap, dishwashing soap, all fragrant free, because that's my thing. But I also get Mrs. Meyer's, and I found like their mint all-purpose cleaner. Not only does it do a great job cleaning, but the smell doesn't bother me.
Nice. That's a rarity.
It is a huge rarity.
Yeah.
You can browse the site. They got thousands of home, beauty, and personal care products. They're all guaranteed to be good for you, your family, your home, the planet. You don't have to shop multiple different places. It's super easy. I go in, they give you a record of your last order. I mean, it's bing, bang, boom. It's very, very quick. Plus, shipping is fast and free on your first order. I think everybody knows why it's important to use eco-friendly products, particularly, these days. But you can check it out. They also have those recycled trash bags. They've got, compostable bags, all of it. Making the switch to natural products has never been easier. For a limited time, when my listeners go to grove.co/majority, you will get to choose a free gift with your first order of $30 or more. But you have to use our special code. Go to grove.co/majority to get your exclusive offer. That's grove.co/majority. Meanwhile, everybody's online these days. You want to protect yourself. One of the biggest things that is out there that gets completely underreported is just the massive amounts of fraud and theft of your info that takes place online, other places as well. But in addition, of course, I think people know that many internet service providers, the ISPs, they log your internet activity. They sell that data to other big tech companies or advertisers. You can protect all of your devices by using ExpressVPN like I do. I got it on my phone. I got it on my iPad. Got it on my computers. Every site you visit, every video you watch, every message you send is tracked by your ISP. They take this information that they get there, and I don't know, I don't know if it's actually like content-based or meta-based, but it's all of it. ExpressVPN is a simple app. It encrypts all of your network data. It tunnels it through a secure VPN server so that your ISP cannot see any of your activity. I know that sounds complicated, but it's actually super easy to use. You just download the app, you tap one button on your device, boom, you're protected. ExpressVPN is the best way to hide your online activity from your ISP, and ExpressVPN does all of this without slowing your connection. That's why it's rated the #1 VPN service by CNET and Wired. So stop handing over your personal data to ISPs and other tech giants who mine your activity and sell off your information. You can protect yourself with the VPN that I trust to keep me private online. ExpressVPN.com/majority. That's ExpressVPN.com/majority. You get 3 extra months free. Go to ExpressVPN.com/majority right now to learn more. All right. And lastly, I think folks know that I am also, in addition to like natural clean products, I don't like to put very much on my body in any way whatsoever. Obviously, clothes I wear, but I don't like to use like creams or any of that stuff. And for a long time, I did not wear deodorant because I was worried about all the crap that's in there, like heavy metals and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
I don't like any of that stuff. But then, I find myself as a single guy and I think maybe I should be careful about that. Well, Native. It's an antiperspirant. They have deodorant as well that you don't have to worry about because it has ingredients that you've heard of, like coconut oil and shea butter. It doesn't have aluminum. It doesn't have the parabens or whatever those are. Has none of that junk. They have 10 cents. They have classic ones and then rotating seasonal ones. You're guaranteed to find one you love. For me, I like the scent that is called as in unscented. But that's just me. I've tried the coconut, and I don't mind the coconut. If it's non fragrancy, I'm okay. But they have a bunch of different scents, ones that you'll love. They have the classic scents like coconut and vanilla. Those I can do. Lavender and rose, I cannot do. I don't know why I'm telling people this, but right. Cucumber and mint, I also can do. The citrus and herbal musk, cannot do.
Too much musk?
I just can't do anything that is like based upon like flowers or anything like that. But the point is,
But I like lavender, so I think I'd like those things.
Yeah, but just be careful.
But then not around
But
you.
like
Jeez.
I say, they have unscented option. They also have a sensitive collection that's made without baking soda if you're sensitive. So if one of your New Year's resolutions is to cut down on your plastic consumption, Native now offers a line of plastic-free deodorants in their most popular scents as well. There's a reason why Native has over 16,000 5-star reviews, and the reason is because it works. You get free shipping on every order, plus a 30-day free return and exchange within the United States. You can switch to Native today by going to nativdeo.com/Majority Report, or use my promo code Majority Report at checkout. You get 20% off your first order. That's nativdeo.com/Majority Report. Use the promo code Majority Report at checkout for 20% off your first order. All right, let's get back into what we got going here. So impeachment will happen today. It's going to be starting momentarily. There's going to be 4 hours of debate and going back and forth, ultimately culminating in a vote as to whether the Senate finds it constitutional to impeach a president who has left office. There's every reason to believe that this vote is going to be somewhere between 51 and 55, that a president can be impeached after office. There was a motion that Rand Paul brought up, I guess it was a week or so ago.
A week or two ago, yeah.
And it was attempting to basically argue that we should summarily dismiss the case on these grounds. Wasn't obviously during impeachment, and that lost 55 to 45. So that might be both a highlight of who is possibly interested in voting to impeach Trump, but also who is interested in voting to allow him to be tried in the Senate.
And those numbers could be different, right? They could vote for the constitutionality, I guess, of the process of impeaching a president who's no longer in office, and then once it comes down to it, not vote to impeach.
Without a doubt, right.
Yeah.
They may find that the case is not strong enough, that he, in fact, I don't know how you could argue at this point that he wasn't there encouraging people to do this. I mean, just by the absence of, just contemplate for a moment. Think of the worst possible president you could. Put Trump aside. What would they do if they saw people who they just were at a rally with barging into the Capitol and they are addicted to Twitter? Just imagine, the effort involved in Donald Trump not tweeting hey guys, calm down. That's not what I meant. Or, hey guys, calm down. Don't do that. It's quite obvious he was not looking to discourage that from happening. And then you have to ask yourself, well, why was that? Because he had an agenda.
No, and he was he was repeating over and over at the rally before they marched on the Capitol. You have to fight. You have to fight. You have to fight.
Gotta be rough.
Yeah.
Not like normal times. You got to be rough and tougher than before.
But yeah, these Republicans who are going to vote not to convict him, and he won't get convicted. It's a 67 vote threshold. It's not going to happen. But the Republicans that do, they're going to probably do so on some First Amendment grounds about how he was just exercising his free speech and his questioning of the voting process, and there was no way for him to know that this would happen. I wonder how many of them are in favor of prosecuting people for flag burning, or who oppose the BDS movement, things like that. There's just so much hypocrisy surrounding the usage of free speech, especially on the right.
And just to be clear on that BDS thing, this is boycott, divest, and sanction. This is a movement that is aimed at getting Israel to allow to get out of the occupied territories. And in this country, for some reason, we have states, and there was an attempt to do this on the federal level, that literally, if you're going to do business with the state, for instance, if you are a teacher and you are hired to go in, and this was a case out of Texas, I believe it was.
Yeah.
If you're hired to go in and give speech therapy for kids who need help with their speech, you need to sign a document that says you will not participate in any type of boycott or divestiture or protest against Israel over their policy of occupying this territory. Now, look, I understand there's different opinions about the occupation. I happen to think that it's an occupation and it's problematic and that I support BDS. But even if you didn't support BDS, how do you rationalize having a state government or a federal government punish you in some way or prohibit you from working with them based upon your protest actions? Like, we don't see that in any other arena. It's absolutely absurd.
Bahia Amawi was the name of the woman in Texas who was a teacher who was contracted out, and she'd worked in the same school district for 9 years, and then the new contract came to her in September of 2018. Said, you have to sign this, but you can't support BDS. And she goes, well, I am of Palestinian descent and I agree with BDS. And then, she's not allowed to work with kids anymore, apparently, in Texas. It's absolutely
absurd.
Insane.
And like I say, you don't have to be Palestinian or even supportive of BDS to think that is absolutely ridiculous. And
yet Republicans, just to bring it back to impeachment, support those kinds of actions overwhelmingly based on associations with evangelical groups, right-wing pro-Israel groups. So we're going to hear a ton of First Amendment arguments in the coming days from the right. Just remember these cases when that happens.
Let's look at a couple of tweets that Donald Trump sent out on the 6th. This is the day that Donald Trump rally goers stormed the Capitol and leading to the death of 5 people, serious injuries to many other officers, 2 suicides that are, it's hard to necessarily attribute to that thing, but it followed in the wake of that. Here is Donald Trump. Here is one of them. This is unbelievable. Do we know a time that he did this? There are things and events that happen when a sacred landslide, election victory. I really think that you could probably write an entire thesis on why he uses the word sacred right there. A sacred landslide election. Remember, a lot of those people, when they came into the Senate chambers, they consecrated it with a prayer.
And a cross erected outside could have been to crucify lawmakers, but also just a good indication of the religious nature of a lot of these Q people. These are the things and events that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from great patriots who have been badly and unfairly treated for so long. Go home with love and in peace. Remember this day forever. He is referring to what took place in the Capitol. I mean, I don't like.
Yeah, this is after, and this is, I think, right before as it happened. This one,
and right before it happens, this is at 2:24 p.m. This is as people were starting to, attack the Capitol. Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution, giving states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts, not the fraudulent or inaccurate ones, which they were asked previously certified. USA demands the truth. As the mob in the Capitol screams, hang Mike Pence. I mean, I guess it'll be interesting to see how Lindsey Graham justifies this. But maybe Donald Trump has his new cell phone number and he doesn't want it to go out again. But that will be up first, the constitutionality. So we will not, it'll be tomorrow and then the following days where we will see the House managers will bring up this stuff and make their case. I don't think they're going to be allowed to, frankly, call witnesses. There's been some reports that the House managers feel like leadership has rushed this through. There is obviously reasons why both the Republicans and the Democrats want to rush it through. The Democrats want to get on with the COVID relief stuff. though it's not inconceivable they could do both simultaneously. The Republicans want to get on with it because they know this ties them to Donald Trump. And despite the fact that you're going to hear in other quarters, you're going to see never Trumper Republicans going on cable news, making the argument that somehow Trump is separate from the Republican Party. Watch the votes in the Senate. Tell us that Donald Trump is separate from the Republican Party. Watch the votes in the House that you had to decertify the election. Tell us that Donald Trump is different from Republicans. Look at the polls. Donald Trump has massive support from Republicans. The Republican Party birthed Donald Trump. Donald Trump did not come from a spaceship. He was not parachuting in. Go back and look at who Mitt Romney, whose ring he had to kiss to become the Republican nominee. Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the natural, I want to say end game, but I'm afraid that he won't be, of the Republican Party. He is a natural progression of the Republican Party.
He's the Frankenstein.
In many respects, but really the Frankenstein is the entire Republican electorate. He is like the projection he is what they are projecting out on. And that he is just like a vessel for them.
I don't know. I mean, I agree with you mostly, but I think a lot of this has been driven by him too. I mean, it's hard to discount the force of his personality and charisma and ability to shape the narrative. We wouldn't have gotten birtherism in the way that we got it if it weren't for him pushing it over and over again.
That may be the case, but maybe there would have been someone else. I mean, look, John Boehner refused to even criticize the 10 members of his caucus that brought up a birther bill in the House.
But who brought that to the fore? It was Trump.
There was a lot of people.
Hillary a little bit too.
McCain's running mate. John McCain's running mate, Sarah Palin, was pretty strong on that. I mean, this was something that came out of Republican fever swamps, and I will say this: 5 years ago, the day he came down that golden escalator, I remember where I was. I went over to MSNBC. And everybody looked at me like I was a lunatic in the green room, in the makeup room. Everybody I would see, I would say, like, this guy is going to win the primary. And because the Republican Party basically had been constructing a suit, and it just so happened that Donald Trump showed up and he fit into it. And that was basically, I mean...
And I'm not trying to discount the complete insanity of the Republican base that was created and why they responded to Palin in that way. I'm just trying to say that it accelerated in a way based on the force of him and his shamelessness and his personality
Without
and
a
his
doubt.
ego, which is fundamental to understanding the devotion to him as well, because it is literally like a cult of personality, and you have to factor that in
without
yeah.
a doubt. I mean, he certainly accelerated it, but anybody who's going to win that Republican primary is and become president is also going to accelerate it. Because they are looking for a specific type of person. And if that person wins, that validates everything that they've been looking for. And that just it carries through. So, I mean, it may not be Donald Trump next time. It may be somebody else. But, we will see.
Very smart of the Clinton campaign to discount him and hope he got the Republican nomination, just based on your commentary back. It's just...
I mean, I was surprised that he won the general election, but I do think that they approached the race in about 5 different ways incorrectly, maybe a dozen, but. That is water under the bridge, as it were. All right. Quickly, just wanted to mention this, that there was a study published in Nature Medicine, which showed Pfizer's mRNA vaccine, which, of course, was the first vaccine approved in the United States for use against COVID-19, apparently neutralized 3 variants of the COVID-19 virus That is the B117 strain that was first identified in the UK. We spoke about this yesterday with Mark-Elaine Derry, the epidemiologist from Louisiana. And two new variants that are confirmed in South Africa, which are the more scary ones. The B117, it's also scary insofar as that it's been predicted that it will be the dominant strain in this country by the end of March. And it's far more transmittable, 40 to 65% more transmittable than what they call the wild one that we have currently in this country that is dominant. The South African ones are also more transmittable, but they can infect younger people. They can also cause more serious health effects. So they tested a bunch of mutations in the United Kingdom and in South Africa, and they found that the Pfizer vaccine neutralizes these variants, which is good news. And one would suspect, although there's no data on this at this point, that the Moderna one might also, because it is a similar technology in terms of mRNA. So we will keep our eyes out at that. The South Africans found that the AstraZeneca vaccine did not address their specific strain that is dominant in South Africa at the moment, and so they're not inoculating people with that because they don't want people going around thinking they're vaccinated and they're not protected against a dominant strain or a very prevalent strain. But with that said, let's move on to the COVID relief bill, which is in part to mitigate the spread of COVID and in part to help people dealing with the economic effects of the pandemic. And they're not mutually exclusive. The more support that people have economically, financially, the less they're going to feel compelled to maybe go in and work in certain circumstances so they don't put themselves and others at risk in situations. Now, hopefully there's more, some of the executive actions that Joe Biden has taken so far will protect people who believe that they would be at risk when they go into work and will keep them eligible for unemployment benefits. But let's go through what this House Democrat plan that was released outlines. The big thing, of course, the top line is the $1,400 checks. A lot of people think those should be $2,000 checks both as a policy and a political matter, like John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock.
Like Joe Biden said pretty explicitly when campaigning for them, it's just automatically, it's even if you're thinking from a Democratic self-preservation standpoint, it's a bad look right off the bat. But that's not happening. It
seems that we're locked in at $1,400 per person, particularly with the House Democrats bill that came out. However, there was some talk about lowering the income thresholds as to who would be eligible for this. And there was sufficient pushback to this idea that apparently the House Democrats have basically not only retained what the income thresholds were before for the $1,200 and the $600 checks.
That's $75,000 a year.
$75,000 and it starts to fade out.
Until $100,000 a year in income.
The other thing that they did is this time around, children and adult dependents are going to be eligible for the full $1,400. So if you're a family that has children, you're going to get more money than not just because the check is larger, obviously $1,400 larger than $1,200. But because it's going to cover all of your children, and if you have a dependent who's an adult, and a lot of people, we're talking millions of people in that situation, they're also going to get a $1,400 check. And
I just want to say, too, on this checkpoint, a lot of credit deserves, or Pramila Jayapal, who's leading the Progressive Caucus, deserves a ton of credit, because she basically said she was in nonstop conversations with the Biden administration or the Biden team, pushing that just to appease one senator. It seems like Manchin is the one who is the most adamant about lowering this threshold to $50,000, which is ridiculous. House Democrats and progressive leaders like her are really trying to prevent that from happening.
And we should say there was a report on Twitter from a reporter, we'll talk about this in a moment, that Manchin seemed to be okay with it. And we can talk a little bit about that. But here is Pramila Jayapal. She was on Rachel Maddow's program on last night, Monday, talking about the importance of keeping the income thresholds. And also, we should also add that your income thresholds can be pegged to either 2019 or 2020, as you made clear the other day, if you get your taxes in early, so that the IRS has, can measure it. Now,
I think it starts February 12th. If you have, just to the audience, right? If you lost your job in 2020, file your taxes as soon as possible, because then you would be eligible.
And if your 2020 income would make you eligible, you can get supplemental payments after you file. So it's just a question of how badly you need it now. Here is Pramila Jayapal on Rachel Maddow's program last night.
But we now Democrats now control the House, the Senate, and the White House. And I grant you that it's a thin majority in both chambers. But the reality, Rachel, is we've got to do what we promised. We've got to get these $2,000 checks, $1,400 in addition to the $600, out to people. We should not be cutting thresholds to $50,000 and $100,000. That makes no political sense. You outlined that. But it also makes no policy sense, because we are looking at 2019 numbers to determine this eligibility. Everybody understands that tens of millions of people lost their jobs or had reduced income in 2020. So if you look at an income threshold from 2019, it is not relevant to what we're trying to do. And this idea of targeting, I just call it restricting for no good reason. Because if you really wanted to target, then you would need to look at the most recent data on income, which is not what we're using in this bill. So let's just get these checks out to everybody. And we did score a victory after a lot of pushing that the Progressive Caucus did over the weekend. We were able to secure at least the initial victory of keeping these thresholds the same. But we just have to be really clear. There are a lot of people who are hurting across this country. And reducing thresholds and talking about some fake targeting is not going to get relief to people, on top of not being what we campaigned on. So that's the first thing.
Appealing to Democrats' sense of electoral self-preservation is the best way to go about it. I mean, the fact that just talking to someone like Biden and Democrats like that, because the idea that to appease Joe Manchin, who just wants it for a political branding purpose to lower the income threshold to $50,000, to do that at the expense of sending checks when promised by Joe Biden to 40 million fewer people than Trump. You think that's going to bite them in 2022 and 2024? Why? So luckily, Maddow, I mean, the fact that she's having Pramila Jayapal on her program is great, because a lot of Democrats, mainstream Democrats in Washington, pay attention to that show, and so hopefully this is swinging the pendulum.
It's interesting. Adam Gentleson, who we had on a couple of weeks ago, who's written a book about the Senate, was tweeting about Joe Manchin's response. And apparently Manchin seemed okay with this. And it is, people explain the Joe Manchin cycle as, come out, knee-jerk against the Democratic Party. And then ultimately, once he has established that into the consciousness of his, who knows? These guys are projecting or whatnot into his constituents' minds. There it is. Now, Gentleson has an interesting point about Manchin. and he uses, you will appreciate this, sabermatics as a way of assessing how good, I guess, for lack of a better term, how helpful specific Democrats are. And now sabermatics, you want to explain, Emma, since you're the resident?
Well, sabermetrics,
yes.
Right? Sabermetrics is like the statistical usage of having to measure efficiency of players in baseball.
Right.
That was popularized by Billy Beane in the Oakland A's.
There you go. And so he has a metric called WAR, wins above replacement. This is
also a baseball.
A sabermetrics term. And it is, in Senate terms, he says you'd calculate it based on votes cast versus the partisan lean of the state. Now, of course, West Virginia is deep red territory. He cites also John Tester. Deep red states, but casting a lot of votes for Democrats. They have the highest WAR, as it were, that is wins above replacement. Someone like Dianne Feinstein, however, who comes from an extremely blue state, she has almost the lowest WAR score, as it were. Now, there is no official, although apparently he's casting about for someone to actually put out this metric.
Pretty awesome.
But here is Manchin, according to the Hill periodical, I guess, or website now, pool report. We're just trying to make sure that people are truly in need. Okay, so if they can show that 75,000, 150,000 are truly in need, it's basically they have adjusted gross income. That's how people get up to 250 and 300. They want to solve that and put a hard stop. I mean, he's basically just saying like, okay, he's just coming down off it. And that's, look, at the end of the day, if that's what Joe Manchin has to do, and he has to have some performative type of thing so that he can maintain his brand in his state. I'm happy with that, as long as at the end of the day that number is in there. Now, I think it's a huge mistake, and it's seemingly completely not worth it. I mean, we've seen experts analyze this, the difference between $2,000 and $1,400 in terms of these checks. As a political matter, we're only talking about the calculation was somewhere around $45 billion, because I guess apparently, some of it will be clawed back through taxes, et cetera, and you'll be savings on the other end because people will not need to. We know that the checks in the first time diminished the number of people living in extreme poverty in this country for like 3 or 4 or 5 months significantly.
Yeah.
And so $2,000, that $600 means a lot to people. It's not a huge sum of money. And as a political matter, you can say that like, well, the $600 wasn't there when he made the promise and blah, blah, blah. But that's just that level of like, when you have to explain it, as they say in comedy, if you have to explain the joke, it's not funny. If you have to explain the policy on $2,000 checks by showing the algorithm in which you've arrived to that, it's probably not as politically effective as it could be.
Well, tell that to the Democratic Party for the past 40 years when they means test everything. But we are lucky that as, Lieberman tried to play kingmaker, Manchin is not as good at it. He's not as ideologically driven, in my view. It's more of a branding thing, and I don't think he's as shrewd as past kind of centrist Democrats. So he can be massaged in this area. It's also, he's not beholden to, like, say, the Chamber of Commerce.
Right. His donors are pretty
are coal and,
yeah, exactly.
and other nefarious industries, but not the ones that would be directly lobbying against checks like this. So that is the silver lining here.
So we have the $1,400 checks. The unemployment insurance extension goes through August 29th instead of the end of September, which was in the original plan floated by the Biden administration. Not quite sure on why that's the case. Still significantly longer, obviously, than the Republican plan. The minimum wage is included in that. Now, we'll put a pin in that for one moment because we want to talk more about that. But like I say, $1,400, that's in there. the unemployment insurance not pegged, and this I think is very unfortunate. It is not pegged to unemployment numbers. It is just pegged to the end of August, as opposed to we'll stop payments when unemployment falls below a certain amount. That was a problem even in the HEROES Act. For whatever reason, Nancy Pelosi, steeped in Pete Peterson ideology, the notion that there is something intrinsically wrong with a deficit or a debt, the notion that pay-go is a smart policy limitation on what you can spend.
That turned out well.
Yeah, exactly. This is sort of a hallmark of her disposition, and I suspect that's why we're not seeing automatic stabilizers. And it's ridiculous, of course, because now you're going to have to come back and do this again in reconciliation, unless the Democrats think it's in their best interest to go up against the Republicans. From a political standpoint, I would just rather make sure that people get what they need. If you're thinking about politics, that's ultimately going to help. The next question is $15 minimum wage, which has been included in the Democratic bill. Joe Biden reportedly does want this to pass. He just doesn't think it can pass in the Senate. And the reason why...
But he does say that out loud, right? So he said, put it in. I don't think it's going to survive.
Exactly.
If there...
Now,
okay. But, you know, you don't need to say that. But sure, publicly.
Might be helpful to the only argument I have, and this is a very generous one, but again, look, we're going to have a much better sense of who Joe Biden is in terms of, you know, what he wants and where he's being sincere or just mouthing things, you know, by the end of March when this stuff passes. It's also conceivable to me that if you're going to have a situation where you're anticipating the parliamentarian to make a certain ruling, and you want to maintain your relationships with Senate Republicans, as Joe Biden clearly does want to, though not so much that he won't do reconciliation, saying that you'd be surprised if the parliamentarian ruled that the $15 minimum wage can be part of the bill, and then the parliamentarian does that, you can be like, well, it's not because I pushed him. I mean, that's a very generous perspective.
Yeah,
and it doesn't, but it shouldn't in any way inhibit people pushing on this. And it certainly hasn't inhibited Bernie Sanders, who has been accruing all sorts of, and like he said the other day, I got a bunch of lawyers going over why the $15 minimum wage can be included in reconciliation. And just a reminder, reconciliation is a specific type of law, if you will, which is not subject to the filibuster. However, there are statutory constraints upon what can be passed through reconciliation. You only get one bite at the apple per fiscal year. By a fluke, Joe Biden's going to have 3 bites, 3 fiscal years in which he can do reconciliation. Anything in reconciliation, in a reconciliation bill, must directly affect the U.S. government's federal budget. And there was question, how does a $15 minimum wage affect the U.S. budget? There have been multiple reports and studies put out on this. One study showed that it would actually generate $60 billion a year for the U.S. government in increased taxes and in savings for welfare provisions, if you will, like food stamps and others, because it's going to lift 1 million people out of poverty.
Yeah.
And it's going to raise millions more out of thresholds for government assistance in other areas. And And so, but there's been multiple studies. Well, the Congressional Budget Office came out with a study, and it wasn't very good news.
Except for the fact that it relates to the budget.
Exactly. The Congressional Budget Office is run by a Republican who used to be a former member of the American Enterprise Institute. He was actually installed because the Republicans did not like the score. That's what they call it. That's like, how much will this affect the U.S. budget of repeal of the Affordable Care Act during the Trump years. And they didn't like the CBO score, so they replaced the entire CBO staff.
A lot
leadership.
of what is indicative of the Trump era is replacing normally bipartisan or non-political appointments with political actors, and now we're seeing the results because they are saying that 1.4 million jobs will be lost by the $15 minimum wage. A lot of that is because people who are wage earners will quit their second or their third job. So they'll just have to participate in an economy by working at one place as opposed to having to work at multiple places. That's what a lot of progressive economists are saying in regards to the CBO score.
So be clear. You can lose 1.4 million jobs, but that doesn't mean that 1.4 million people are going to lose work. It means that they're no longer going to have to work. $15. I mean, this is pretty basic math. $15 is twice as much as 7.25. In fact, it's a little bit more. I don't want to get too technical. I don't want to be too mathy on you.
Too sabermetricsy on me.
If you've got to work 12 hours a day, $7.25, and you have the ability to quit the job that you work in 4 hours a day at, that goes down as a job loss. The deficit that it's going to cost the U.S. government apparently $6 billion a year. Now, there's a lot of people who have an issue with these numbers. However, and I think Bernie Sanders put it well. He said, this stuff doesn't seem accurate to me. However, because it does show, it doesn't matter if it adds to the U.S. budget. It doesn't matter which column it goes on, the liability or the asset. As long as you can add it to one of those columns, it impacts the U.S. budget, and there's an argument now that, despite the fact that it's not necessarily a budget analysis or a score that you would love to promote, it impacts the budget and therefore can remain in the bill in the Senate. And
just do what the Republicans did when they got a disastrous CBO score and then replace the head of the CBO. Just say, the wage will pay for itself. The tax cuts will pay for themselves. The wage increases will pay for themselves.
This is from the CBO report itself. It says it would lift over 900,000 Americans out of poverty. 17 million people currently making below the minimum wage would be directly impacted, while another 10 million people whose wages are slightly above the minimum wage would also be affected. And by affected, that means their wages are going to go up.
Yeah.
It also, like you say, in addition to you're talking about the loss of jobs that are jobs that people don't want, right? Because they are they don't want to work 20 hours a day, 15 hours a day, and they won't have to because of the increase in their wages. It's also based on what has been considered a faulty study out of Seattle. But be that as it may, none of these things are significant enough. You're talking over the course of 10 years, too, now, incidentally. None of these things are considered significant enough that there would be arguments as to why you wouldn't have an increase in the minimum wage, at least among Democrats. And the real question is, will it be in the bill? And it's hard to look at this now and say the parliamentarian could actually rule that this doesn't impact the federal budget when the CBO says it does. You've got other reports that say it does. And remember, at the end of the day, the vice president can also overrule the interpretation of the parliamentarian. And that vice president is
Kamala Harris. So if Biden agrees to it, that's a big if. That could happen.
All right, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, couple of quick stories that you should know before the end of the day. Back in a moment. Just going to race through these. We just got a couple minutes left here. Just want to keep you informed that in Alabama, voting has begun for some Amazon workers who are looking to unionize. And this is a big deal. There are 6,000 workers that the National Labor Relations Board has determined are a bargaining unit. And more than 3,000 workers have signed cards authorizing a union to represent them. It is the RWDSU. This is the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. And the voting will take place over the course of the next month. So this is a big deal. This could be the first time that we see this type of unionization in the Deep South. That's a big deal.
It's massive.
And Alabama is a so-called right-to-work state. And some people say that's actually going to help the union push because nobody's going to be forced to pay even agency fees.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, a hacker broke into the water treatment system in the city of Oldsmar, Florida, in Pinellas County, and attempted to change the chemical composition that is dumped into the water in a way that would have made the water poisonous. And they broke in twice. Tomorrow on the program, we're going to have Nicole Perlroth on, who's written a book about this, just coincidentally, to talk about the dangers that we may face as a society from hackers doing stuff like this. Also, we should tell you that ICE reportedly, according to The Guardian, went rogue and deported 72 people to Haiti, including a baby and 21 other children. And they are apparently refusing to abide by new guidelines that was laid down by the Biden administration and its Homeland Security Secretary, Mayorkas, and which is a 100-day moratorium on such deportations. And lastly, in Austin, Texas, defund the police. They have taken part of the police budget and they are buying hotels to provide housing for the unhoused in Austin, Texas. That is a great rubber meets the road story of what we saw over the course of the summer. Hopefully we see more of that. In the meantime, we'll talk more about that tomorrow. We'll be talking about impeachment and, of course, this hacking stuff. Until then, we will see you tomorrow. And for those of you sticking around, we will see you today.
Whoa. Hello.
There you go. Freaking everybody out. We're going to head into the fun half. Joining us in the fun half today will be Nomi Konst. And Nomi's show today, well, I'll let her tell us who's going to be on her show. But I just want to remind you, this program relies on your support. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you support the free show. We give you the free show free of commercials. And you get extra content. It is your support that we rely on to keep this show going. And hopefully, as you know, we can get back into the studio in a more sort of like comprehensive way. We can start to grow stuff and all sorts of post-COVID-y, or at least like somewhat post-COVID-y plans.
Post-COVID-y.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying.
That's the name of my band.
Is that true?
No, I don't know.
Do you play an
That'd
instrument?
be a good band name, post-COVID.
Post-COVID would be a great band.
It's just a little joke I do sometimes when I hear a phrase that I find funny.
Well, you're not the first person to say that, but I mean, you don't play an instrument?
I dabble in, and I know how to poorly play the piano and the guitar. And,
really?
Yeah, and
Maybe you
Played
should jam with
clarinet
Brendan. Brendan
also.
has a band. You play clarinet?
I did in like middle school, something like that.
That's not hard for me to imagine.
Wait, are we counting middle school? Really? If that's the case, I play the flute and the saxophone.
Yeah, I'm a tenor saxophone player.
There we go. Well, I mean, but that was decent at clarinet.
I played Dust in the Wind as a 7-year-old to my parents that I learned on the guitar, and they both fell asleep, and that was the last time I played the guitar. So
Yeah, this was a part of like a desperate effort for my parents to just try to get me to like really have a passion about anything other than like, you know,
sports and politics.
Sports and sports not even at that time, but politics, and then like Gilmore Girls.
I understand.
Okay.
That's basically the story of my daughter's like that as well. I'm trying to get her. It's pretty limited. It's just like Law and Order. And don't forget, justcoffee.coop. This is a great outfit that I am very, very, very proud to support, and that they sponsor the show. They have been with us really since the Break Room Live days. Just Coffee, it's a co-op. I went out and visited them in Madison, Wisconsin. I guess it was a couple of years ago now. And
Glenn Greenwald provided free publicity for them today.
Glenn Greenwald was promoting them. That was really great to see.
So kind of him.
They're a co-op, and the thing that's awesome about this that I didn't understand until I went and spoke to them in their roasting is that they have buyers, the sellers that they buy from farms that are in Central America. I think they get some from Africa sometimes, and they were telling me that, like, you know, what happens is sometimes these farms, they have a bad season, right? There's a drought, there's a hurricane, whatever it is. And most coffee companies will just say, okay, we're going to go get coffee from somewhere else. They will not do that. They will figure out how to make it work, even with like crops that aren't as good, or coffee that like they think may not be as at the same quality as it was the year before. They will figure it out with them, and they'll add in other beans if they have to, and make they protect their suppliers. And so they're a great company. And they gave out a bunch of free coffee to the folks in Madison back in 2011, I guess it was. Wow. And so they're a great movement company, justcoffee.coop. And you get a coupon code majority, you get 10% off. Or you can buy the Majority Report blend. Nomi, who's on your show today?
Hello. We have a great show today. We have the one and only Thomas Hartman. Tom Hartman is on the show. Wow. Childhood excitement here. Not childhood, like college age. It would be Emma's childhood, though, back in the Gilmore Girl era when I was a full functioning adult, making me feel my age.
I was working with Tom at that time.
There you go. See, I think I know who you were working with, too. So Tom Hartman's at the top, and then later we have Judd Legum and Akela Lacey. So excited about that. Kayla Lacey. I'm sorry. Kayla Lacey. Gotta say her name right. Akela Lacey. I'm turning into Sam. Kayla Lacey.
I give everybody that disease.
Now I have it. But like really great, guests you have on these days, Nomi.
Thank you. It's the team. Teamwork makes the dream work.
3 p.m. Can people check it out? And where can they find your show?
They can find it at youtube.com/The Nomi Key Show, as well as twitch.tv/the_Nomi Key / no, wait, underscores. Whatever the Twitch thing. The way that they do Twitch, okay? And
we'll rate it. We'll rate it. Just be in the Majority Report chat, and then we'll send you over there. So
thank you for the raids.
And don't forget, folks, you can check out the Antifada. They're streaming on Twitch at twitch.tv/the Antifada, or you can find them on Patreon, patreon.com/the Antifada. Matt, what is happening in the Matt Leckian media universe?
Yeah, speaking of great guests, on Left Reckoning on Thursday night, we'll have Grace I always mess it up. Grace Blakely, author of The Corona Crash and Stolen, to talk about financialization and the COVID economy. Also, Haiti's general strike, Ecuador, and the Bessemer, Alabama Amazon unionization process ongoing. So that'll be Thursday night at 8 at the Left Reckoning YouTube page.
Do you mean Grace Blakely?
Dude, Blakely. Easy.
Oh, flex on them.
We will see you in the fun half. is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous. You're a little bit upset. You're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
That's a good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 eighths. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Ooh.
Rand Paul. I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
I think I might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook.
Throw our hands up.
Ooh. Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me...
Hey, shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is the... What the... It is the fun half of the program. What we got here going? I'm going to try and call into the phone system here. Your buddy Neera Tanden apparently is up the banking committee right now.
She apologized.
Which buddy? Our buddy? All of us' buddy? Who are we talking about?
Tweets in like 4 years.
I know, it's been a while for me too. We've all been blocked by her. But that is one of the best things, that she's no longer going to be online tweeting. I mean, I imagine she is going to end up getting confirmed, but we'll see. What did she do? She apologized for what? Her tweets?
She said, all right. She said, I quote, I know there have been some concerns about some of my past language on social media, and I regret that language and take responsibility for it.
Mm.
Okay, so not even really an apology, but an acknowledgement of...
Lame.
I mean, to be honest, like the tweeting is the least of my concerns, you know, regarding her. And, you know, Cap was, I think, a very, I think their funding really problematic.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that she would weed out, you know, people who are too progressive in their and people who were challenging her funding sources. I, you know, was somewhat agnostic with her being at the OMB just because the my perception of her is that she doesn't really have anything, that she's a bit of a cipher as well, and that it really, it's just the craven attempts to get funding for CAP, et cetera, et cetera. But
after socking Fashiker in the stomach.
But Matt Stoller tweeted out something today, which I didn't really realize about her, is that she has, at the very least, supposedly expressed support. There is a mechanism in which regulations are developed, and we see this mostly, we see it in the FDA and we see it at the EPA in particular, where there is a cost-benefit analysis that is, depending on the administration, that is imposed upon making regulations. Now, strictly a financial cost-benefit analysis or exclusively one. Now, obviously, it makes sense to say, like, hey, this is going to cost $100 to make sure that people are going to not get sick from, let's say, poisonous water. And you could also sort of like look at it and say, the amount of poisoning that goes on now cost $90 to address. Some people die, and you can't really, cost that out. I mean, to exclusively use that calculation, and then of course it's like, how do you also assess those costs is also problematic. But just even to use that formula is highly problematic when regulation has other goals other than saving society money. Regulation has goals in terms of, and because it's very hard to quantify. Like, how do you quantify a life that may not be marred by illness, even though we can quantify how much it costs to treat that illness? How much you quantify, the value of having, nature, and how much do you quantify the
vaccine,
other values that aren't associated, that you can't necessarily put a dollar figure on. And so, but she apparently subscribes to that form of regulation analysis, which is also problematic. It is also widely accepted. And speaking of which, they just appointed another guy, Cass Sunstein, to come into the Department of Homeland Security and look at immigration. He is one of these guys who has that perspective that I think is just sort of gross and very, it's just bad. But hopefully at the Department of Homeland Security, it won't be that much of an issue. But she's up there. She's still being interviewed, I guess, as it were, or questioned.
Not sure.
Do we know?
I believe so. She started at 10.
Yeah. I mean, it's not even just her tweets. I mean, she used CAP by taking money from foreign interests and other corporate interests. She used it as a mechanism, as a weapon, as an entity to attack any opposition. I mean, it was, supposed to be this think tank that obviously published reports in favor and released those reports to Democratic lawmakers. So, basically an influence. It's an organization that published reports, got lawmakers on board with it to peddle influence, and then weaponized. I mean, who knows? It's not public information, like how much money was put into going after any opposition. This is dangerous to have in government. I mean, it's dangerous to bring somebody in who was an advocate for interests that were not the U.S.'s sole interests. I mean, that alone, forget all the progressive stuff. The fact that you have this person now potentially overseeing the budget of the United States when now, as of like a minute ago, she was being influenced by foreign entities. And she sat there in the platform committee meetings. I mean, she was steering the Democratic Party's platform committee meetings from the Hillary side.
Yeah, I mean, many people perceived CAP as the Clinton administration in exile during the aughts. I mean, that was basically what it was called. I mean, so, but yeah, I mean, she's highly problematic, and there really is sort of a quality of like just payback for her. I mean, Cap has gone out of business, and right, or more or less.
No, it still functions.
It's function, or is it like severely diminished? I thought.
I mean, think progress is gone.
And
I think they're relaunching it actually in a different form.
Yeah, well, one could hope. Very good.
But it's like the Clinton Foundation. I mean, Cap was like one part political, like a political campaign tool, one part policy, one part gathering influence from foreign interests, and then peddling that influence to lawmakers.
Let's go see what we got do we have any calls? I can't quite tell. I'm not seeing anything up on the call thing. Oh, wait, there we go. All right, let's go to calling from a 925 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello?
Hello? Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Oh, this is Carter, Northern California.
Carter?
Wow, can't believe I actually got on.
Northern California. I can't believe you did either.
Yeah. This might be a little bit off topic. I hope that's okay, the question.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, all right, awesome. For the past few weeks, I've been thinking a lot about kind of the Republican Party and how it's been changing, and obviously you guys have been covering that quite a lot. And I keep thinking that maybe they might split up as a party. You know, there might be a sort of like a QAnon off-brand party, I suppose. I don't see that happening anytime soon, but I'm just curious to see like what your guys' forecast is for that. And also one more thing to that, I'm curious as to like how you feel whether it's a positive thing, because a part of me is like, it would be awesome if that did happen in a way to see the Republican Party so split. But at the same time, I don't really want to see that QAnon philosophy shit getting any more headway in the political sphere as it already has now.
That's a good question. I'll let you go and we'll answer it.
Yeah, I think that splitting it up into two parties would actually marginalize the QAnon people even more. I think that's something that we need to strive for, is the division of the Republican Party into things like that. But unfortunately for our side, Republican voters are authoritarians and they'll follow the big fish. And so while I do think that, you know, the Q cultural schism is going to present problems for the Republican Party, I don't see a viable second party being formed. It just would be kind of manifested during primary challenges.
Yeah, my thought is that you're never going to have a more successful party than you had under Donald Trump in the next at least 20 years. And that's because, you know, 20 years before Trump was president, he had already thought about running for president and toyed with it. He had the most popular television show on NBC on any channel at the time. He had built a movement. He was, 20 years ago, that's where he was. And right now, Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, there's nobody that I can think of, unless I'm wrong, that has that kind of popularity. Also, just because the media world we live in, nobody has that popularity and that movement behind him, and the tax, low tax Republicans behind them. I just think there is going to be a split, but it's not going to be an institutional split. I think they're going to try to keep as many of the Q people under their wing, but it's not going to grow. There's nowhere else for them to grow than the far right. And I just don't think it's worth it. But this is the moment where, with the impeachment, are you on the side of democracy or are you not? And, maybe that's our job, is to make it extremely clear to the Republican Party that if you continue to side with this Trump base that, frankly, is never going to be what it was, in November of 2020, you're not on the side of democracy.
Let's play. I know you guys played this last week, but let's play Gorka on Rubin saying don't go third party, because this is the only way there's going to be any type of third party here. I can't even believe they had this. That's such an array of clowns.
The brain trust.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that beard.
Who is that guy with the beard?
Isn't he the guy that's always on Tim Pool's show?
Jack Murphy, I guess.
Yeah.
The only way I see any type of third party, it would be if Donald Trump launched the Patriot Party or whatever it is. And then that's going to be like, that to me just feels very USFL to me. Like it will last for like 6 months, and then he'll just like suck every dollar he can out of them.
Yeah.
And then it just go away essentially. But here, let's play this clip, and this is why. I mean, they're not looking to do a third party, and because like, look, the bottom line is third parties, at least on a national level, don't work in our current environment. If you get to a place where you get ranked choice voting in enough states, you've got a good shot in those areas to start to build an apparatus. If you build from a local level up, you've got an opportunity to build a local apparatus. Maybe you do it in a couple of states. You do it. You get a couple of congressional seats. Maybe at one point you aim for a Senate seat. It's just not a viable way to exert political power within our electoral system. You know, like outside the system, you know, you actually probably have more ability to exert political pressure outside the system as a third entity than you would as one that's actually attempting to perform electorally. But play this clip.
Guys, I'll let you speak for yourself, but basically I think you're a conservative at this point, or at least sort of a non-Democrat, let's say. And I thought bringing the three of you guys on to discuss what the future of this thing would be interesting. Gorka, what do you think the future of the Republicans is? Is it a Trump future, or are they going back to all the other guys?
Well, I tell you one thing, it better not be a third party, Dave. So that would be a disaster. That's how we got Bill Clinton when Ross Perot ran against Clinton and split the conservative vote. Look, I listened to my sources. I had one of the new freshman congresswomen on my show, Lauren Bobbitt, who's already created quite a name for herself, who said, on my show, America First, this is Donald Trump's party now. I don't know what he's going to do in 2024. I was there at Andrews Air Force Base.
There you go. I love how like this guy just knows exactly how to plug his show and himself, and that really
America
impressive.
first.
Yes. Unbelievable.
Let the America flow through you.
Let's go to 254 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Oh my God. Can't believe I actually got on. This is Michael from Texas.
Michael from Texas. What's on your mind?
Well, I just had a quick question for you, Sam. I was talking to a friend of mine a couple weeks ago, and I guess they're fairly liberal. And she was basically making the argument that we shouldn't really hold Biden to that much because he didn't promise all that much, which is obviously excuse me, it's obviously a bit ridiculous. And then she started saying that it wouldn't be a good idea for him to make any decisions on the student loan debt forgiveness, because then that would lead to like catastrophic tax blowback for people. And I hadn't heard anything about that. So I was wondering, excuse me, sorry. Oh my God. I was wondering if you could address that.
Let me take the second one first. The argument is that if the federal government forgives loans, would it be a taxable event with the IRS?
Yeah.
And the answer is only if the federal government decides that it will be. Like, in other words, like Biden has the same authority to say, no, it's not.
No, okay. Well, that's kind of what I figured, that, like, you know, I obviously didn't want to just go out on the argument that, like, oh, you know, they're not going to make that decision, because I just don't think they will. But that's basically what it is, that, like, it's kind of the same thing as, like, after forgiving student loans on that authority, somebody could come in and, like, undo it, but nobody would actually do that. Is that
they cannot do that, actually.
Yeah.
Once that loan
that
loan is discharged, it's gone. And there's actually a couple of programs where there is some limited loan forgiveness that has taken place, and you can just Google that and find out how the IRS treated it, because that has come up in the past. I mean, the idea you don't pressure Joe Biden on what he didn't promise. I mean, you pressure him on what he promised, and then you pressure him on what he didn't promise. Well, of course.
Right. Well, yeah, that was obviously she said that, and then I was kind of like, where are you getting your stuff from? And then I did like a quick Google search of like taxability of loan forgiveness, and the only thing I could find was like a couple of Forbes articles and like MSNBC, like the money section. So I was like, I don't really know anything about this. This doesn't seem like much of a thing other than just kind of establishment fear-mongering in order to not do anything.
Yeah, it's just that's not the case. I'm trying to think of where you could find some writing on that, but I know that that's come up and it's been dismissed. It's an easy fix.
Cool. Well, that's good news. That was like the only thing I was a little bit confused about. Before I go, I want to say like 3 quick like rapid fire things. One, Sam, your work on Bob's Burgers is magnificent. Hugo's one of my favorite characters, and that was before I even knew it was you.
Well, I don't blame him.
Number 2, just wanted to say, love the whole MR crew, Matt, Brendan, Emma, Jamie, old Matt, and Nomi Key, and you too, Sam. And then number 3, rest in peace to Michael Brooks. We miss him every day.
Appreciate it. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Good thing. Thank you.
This is, apparently Representative Chip Roy from Texas is mad about people politicizing Representative Ron Wright's death. He's the first congressman to die of COVID. He was a big anti-masker. And people are, and Representative Chip Roy says we shouldn't politicize Ron Wright's death. In fact, even noting that he died of COVID is a politicization of his death, according to this guy. And, well, let's play the clip.
And look, this is the left doing what the left does. They're politicizing this virus, politicizing the death of a public servant. Here's what people won't say in the nation, or these leftist rags that are attacking congressmen like Ron Wright, is that for 2 years he's been battling cancer bravely and courageously. His body was ravaged with cancer. I know, I'm a cancer survivor. He and I have been talking. I visited with him in the fall, and they were taking precautions and being careful. Yeah. But he felt obliged. He was reelected by the people that he represents in Arlington, Texas. And he and Susan got in their car, and they drove across the country so he could be in D.C. for the swearing in. Yeah. I don't know how he caught the virus, but I know that he was a great man, a great public servant. And we should remember him for his public service, remember him for the courage of battling cancer right through the end.
Right. I mean, let me say this, okay? I obviously, my heart goes out to people who have cancer, and I applaud them fighting cancer. If this guy was not the first congressman to die of COVID or congressperson to die of COVID, I would never know his name. I've never heard of him before. I'm not from Texas. I don't know all 435 Congress people. And the idea that you don't politicize. I mean, first off, this guy had a long record of tweeting out of politicizing COVID through his tweets. I mean, look at, he go ahead, put up the last couple of things. Do we have anything that were his tweets on his about masks? He was an anti-masker, and he also was criticizing teachers. Look at this one. Okay,
1-2 punch. Look at that.
Democrats are choosing teacher union and special interests over the well-being of our students. The CDC says schools can open safely if proper precautions are taken. What are we waiting for? Now, a couple of things on this point. One, the vast majority of Americans, or at least a plurality of Americans, believe that are supportive of teachers and teacher unions not going in and bringing their kids into the classroom because we have received no funding for schools to deal with this. So it's like saying, why are people afraid to jump off a building? If they have wings and can fly, it's not going to be a problem. And we've got to stop kowtowing to all these people who are afraid to jump off the building. As long as they have the proper wings to fly, then there shouldn't be an issue. Well, the bottom line is there's been no concerted effort in this country to figure out how to make sure that schools are safe. Some schools more expensive schools are getting ventilation systems and people are being kept safe. And there's like testing for kids, private schools, they test the kids like, every other day or something. We're not seeing that money being paid out to protect schools and to help develop this stuff. And we had no national guidance on this. And here's this guy attacking them as if they're just being, afraid for no reason. He's politicizing this.
What's the date on that tweet?
That one was on February 5th, so that's his second to final tweet.
Yeah, that was
he actively had COVID at that time.
I mean, I think it's probably his staff that was tweeting. I think we have a situation like that going on.
But even so, the staff felt it, despite him laying in the hospital.
Oh yeah,
dying with COVID, the political agenda of denying all of the scientific evidence that surrounds COVID, that's more important.
What I love about Republicans, you see this over and over, is like when they're stuck, when they know that they have no way out of an argument, they immediately go to, why are you politicizing this? Why are you politicizing anything? It's like politics doesn't overlap with life. And that actually reveals themselves even more. It's like, actually, we do politics because we want to improve people's lives and save lives. Why are you doing it then?
Is there any better example of anything that has ever existed than the politicization that COVID has proved how much of our existence is political and subject to politics? Not, tiny politics, but politics in terms of like, how do we decide how we're going to distribute money? How are we going to decide and that's basically, look, that's the whole story.
Should we have a pandemic response unit? That's the night and day difference.
Exactly.
Remember when Trump was trying to hit Biden on Ebola? Right. in the fucking primary? That is a huge difference. That goes to show that governance and politics matters when it comes to this kinds of stuff. He proved
you have
Biden's point.
The most sort of, I think, dramatic example of public health policy that exists. And public health policy is all a function of politics. Even the question as to should public health be a function of politics is a political question. Nothing exists in a vacuum here. There is no alien to come down and go like, look, this is serious, guys. This is a pandemic. So we're not going to allow you to quibble and go back and forth about public health policy. We know what it is. We're thousands of years advanced from you guys. Trust us. All right. We're just going to impose this and back off. Nobody politicizes. That doesn't exist. And so this is all political.
It just shows you, how much of the Republican Party is rooted in we, rich white men, know more than you people. Let us handle it. We don't need a conversation about this. Stop politicizing it. Stop having debates about things that affect your lives. We've got this covered. The CDC is well funded enough. You listen to us. No debate. Oh, and meanwhile, look away while we take money from the coffers and privatize everything. And because that's ultimately what it is. It's distract away, make it about political quibbling and partisanship rather than having real conversations about, well, where is this money going? It's distraction. It's a distraction technique over and over and over.
Let's talk a little bit about, we got Greg Gutfeld out there running interference for Donald Trump during the impeachment. And what this shows is that, look, impeachment is obviously it's a political process, and they know the Republicans are not going to vote for Donald Trump. They also are aware that there's a price to be paid for that, and not going to vote for impeachment, and they know there's a price to be paid for it. That's why you hear them flacking for him. Here is Greg Gutfeld on the 5.
The problem here is if you demonize people long enough, other people will act on it. The warfare won't stop until both sides police their own sides. So the Democrats have to take violence from Antifa and BLM as seriously as the Republicans did for the Capitol, right? See, it's easy for Republicans, right? Because they come out of the womb pro-law enforcement. So they're like, they find everything that violates the law, left or right, to be offensive, right? And including a one-off at the Capitol that has like never happened among like Trumpers, right? So, but remember, what we're learning here is that only the left can call for revolution, only the left can overthrow and demonize, and only the left can riot, loot, and destroy. And that's because they have the implicit backup of the media, because they all believe that the personal is political. If your heart's in the right place, you're not evil. How did communism kill 100 million people? Because their heart was in the right place, and they had people in the media, people, Americans, defending them in the name of equality. And they do reach equality in the terms of equally all dead.
You know, Jesse, the one big problem with this issue of hypocrisy on violence, you know, condoning one kind of violence while refusing to condemn the other, is that it's about standards, and it's about fairness, and it's about treating these things equally. And we're not seeing that at all when it comes to the media and Democrats who are now impeaching President Trump, when you could argue Maxine Waters should also be impeached for the things that she has said. What?
All right, well, no pause.
All right. Well, first off, Greg's sitting there, and the guy's taking notes on this. I mean, it's so embarrassing because he's all over the frickin' place.
Yeah.
And you had Republican lawmakers who were crashing that Capitol. The relationship between Democratic politicians and Antifa or BLM, it's absurd that you're drawing that analogy. And A. And B, it's fundamentally, first of all, the idea that he is referring to the attack. You could easily call it the attack on the Capitol Police if you wanted to.
And they would if it were reversed.
They killed a Capitol Police officer. They maimed like a half a dozen. They had a guy lost his eye. You had people who were seriously injured in their limbs. You had one guy like heart attack. I mean, the guy's talking about how Republicans come out of the womb with respect for police officers. You're literally talking about an attack on the Capitol Police Force.
And again, the insistence that Antifa is behind all of this violence and destruction, when white supremacists were behind a significant majority of domestic terrorist attacks in 2020. I think the number is 67%. It's so counterfactual that it's ridiculous, but they are masters at this, getting the talking points from down high, from up on high, and making it into a reality and making it into a political conversation, as if Antifa has killed anybody. Has there been the Antifa killing anybody? Reports of that in the media, and yet when white supremacists and Q people kill a cop, their precious cops, zip.
And did they ever give a statement? Did the police union ever come out and say, you know, how dare these people storm the Capitol and kill our own? Isn't that what the leadership usually does? When what was it, that poisoning happened, that supposed poisoning?
Well, I mean, let's also be clear, too. I mean, we know what BLM, we know what Antifa are protesting. And to the extent that there was violence, it was not the point of the protest. What was the point of that so-called protest at the Capitol? The point of the protest at that Capitol was to literally amass and crash the Capitol to intimidate the lawmakers so that they wouldn't vote to certify the election. I mean, let's be clear on what the intent was here too, right? I mean, the intent was to commit a violent act. That was the point of that protest. The intent was to go in there and intimidate those lawmakers from doing a rather banal function, which is just to sign off on the election results as they were. And the idea was not to go in and, you know, I don't know what BLM protest was. We're going to go and hang the local constable or something, or whomever it is.
or challenge a democratic system. I mean, what Fox News and the right wing is trying to do today, as Emma said, coming from the top, is distract away from what this impeachment is about. A president who denied democracy and incited violence as retaliation and an intimidation tactic, as you just said. So what they're doing is saying, look over here, look over here, look over here, and trying to reset the minds of literally at this point, probably over 1 billion people who saw the videos of the protesters going in to the Capitol with Nazi slogans on their shirts, with quoting Hitler outside, who smashed security guards' heads indoors. I mean, the entire world saw this and was disgusted, and right-wing media now is like trying to reset their base's brain to make it about something else when the world is talking about the impeachment again of Donald Trump, denying democracy.
The idea, Nomi, that these right-wingers would try and change the subject from the insurrection or the impeachment, I just don't believe that. There's no way. There's no way that they would turn the attention away from that. They'd have to find like some cohort of people that there was already some type of like right-wing animosity towards, and somehow blame them or make some type of comparison. I can only imagine
that's unheard of.
Who would do something so just ridiculous. Cue clip number 3.
Did I set that up for you?
You did.
Wow. Teamwork.
Clip number 3.
Now that takes us back to tomorrow's Barnum and Bailey revival in the Senate. Democrats are arguing that Trump welcomed and incited a violent incursion into the Capitol, when it is they who are enticing illegals to bust through our borders, exploit our resources, and commit crimes. And we're not talking about a few hundred. We're talking hundreds of thousands, eventually millions, if the Democrats have their way. There is an insurrection taking place against America, all right. It's been going on for years in the deepest depth of the D.C. swamp. And now its figurehead resides at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. This insurrection seeks to overthrow everything we love about America by defaming it, silencing it, and even prosecuting it. This is an organized mob funded by billionaires. It's supported by celebrities, and it's aided and abetted by propagandistic news organizations every single step of the way. These insurrectionists have stormed our schools with BLM indoctrinators. They shuttered our classrooms by empowering union heavies. They've overwhelmed small businesses with idiotic, stupid lockdowns. They've robbed Americans of good-paying oil and gas jobs with obscene climate change dictates.
Joe Biden.
They've ripped down historical markers from Washington to Lincoln. They've terrorized patriotic Americans who are now afraid to just speak their minds. They've burned police precincts. They've taken over entire city blocks. And not just for a few hours, by the way, but for weeks. And as
I can only imagine. Laura Ingraham walked into work yesterday and goes, everybody get around. I want to do a comment on impeachment. What would you like to reference? All of it. Take all of the stuff that's on that board, and I want it in one monologue. I want it all. I want the black people. I want the immigrants.
And funnel
I want
into
the statues.
Insurrection. That's what it means.
I want the climate change. I want celebrities. Get me all the celebrities. All of it. All of it. I want all of it in this one thing. But isn't that a little bit of far field? No, I want all of it.
Grinder it all into an insurrection sandwich. Biden and sandwich.
How many Jews do we got listed in this? I want 2 more Jews.
Oh yeah, well they did show. Speaking of Jews, she showed Seth Rogen, right? And she showed
Zuckerberg.
Yeah, I just like love when the celebrities and the elites. It's just like such obvious anti-Semitism. That's just
There's no Clint Eastwood up there.
Yeah. I like that J.B. Pritzker made it.
Yeah.
I'm a little impressed that none of us made it. Clearly, we're not big. We're the Antifa channel and also MSNBC Light. So,
tough.
2 and 1.
Yeah, I mean, I I love making fun of Fox segments, but that one was actually quite scary. I mean, just there are millions of people that watch that every night, and they go, "These are the real problems in America. That the immigrants are coming. They're coming from your children, BLM indoctrinated in your schools. I mean, this is the absolutely most vile use of someone's platform that one could possibly use."
Just a note that her brother says that Laura and his father was a Nazi sympathizer. Just a little bit of context. So that's per Laura's brother.
And said that?
He tweeted it a long time ago.
Like he doesn't like her, and he's.
Yeah, it says the emotional part of her heart is basically broken, and it's probably because our dad was a Nazi. So.
Oh my God. What I don't understand is how someone like Lou Dobbs crossed the line, and that's not crossing the line. Like Lou Dobbs is off, but Laura Ingraham in her primetime spot, that made it.
Well, Lou Dobbs,
a lawsuit.
Yeah. I mean, again, like there's no immigrant. She's not specifically calling out corporations and threatening the financial viability of Fox News, and also like Lou Dobbs was the top-rated show on Fox Business. The numbers were like under 400,000 viewers averaging, but that's because like they compare it to CNBC shows. The big fish is Fox News, not Fox Business, and so she pulls in all those fearful 80-year-olds. And so yeah.
That's the worst thing I've ever seen on Fox News. I'm not gonna lie.
Pretty impressive. Let's go to Fox and Friends. Of course, Brian Kilmeade, our buddy, is doing overtime today. Still mad about the DHS and immigrants, but he's also really upset about the idea that people could actually make $15 an hour. Here is Brian Kilmeade.
And then people have always voted with their feet. They're voting with their feet now. They're saying, I'm going to Texas, I'm going to Florida, I'm leaving California, I'm leaving New York. Why? Because it is more tax-friendly. It is more friendly in the pandemic. If you are in a state that's not paying the wage that you want with the opportunities that you need, you can leave. Right. That's the way our country used to work. We're trying to federalize everything where everything is the same, and these are people that aren't business people. And I'll add to this, Joe Manchin is one of the people against this, because in West Virginia, the cost of living a lot different than it is in Florida, Texas, New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago. Why do people not understand that?
Well, I mean, is he making an argument against $7.25 as a minimum wage? He's making an argument there shouldn't be a federal minimum wage, right? Because there are differences between states. I mean, we have federally mandated minimal standards for everything. Why is he not out there going like, I don't like the idea that we have federalized how much lead can be in the candy for kids? Look, if you don't want lead in your candy for kids, you go to a state that has a higher threshold for how much lead is in your candy.
Hey, Brian Kilmeade, if you don't like your taxes when you live in New York at your fancy studio, why don't you go move to Florida where there's no income tax? Or why don't you go move to the middle of the country,
They
Oklahoma?
often do.
Live with the real people. Brian Kilmeade, right? I mean, that seems to be his kind of notion. Or do you have family roots in certain areas and it might be a little complicated to move and you have all the fucking resources?
But people
in the
should
world?
understand that what he's arguing against is we should not have an EPA. We should not have an FDA. We should not have an OSHA. We should not have any federal minimums about any standards of anything.
Child labor laws. I bet he'd love if there were
Let's have
immigrant
each
kids
state
working.
Let's have each state determine child labor laws. Let's have why do we even have this whole standardized thing with I don't know, traffic signals? And why do we have anything that is standardized across the country? It's absurd.
Yeah, if Mississippi wants a purple light for their red light instead, let them have it.
Exactly. It's a little bit more that's their color of their state flag. I don't know, but the point being that they are hiding the ball here. If you want to argue that $15 minimum wage is too high for West Virginia, as opposed to, or that $15 a minimum wage is too high for the country, then you argue that. The bottom line is, if it had kept up with inflation, if it had kept up with productivity, it would be much higher than $15 an hour at this point.
Well, that's ultimately it, though. Like, It's the standard for the states that are not. I mean, you can't live off a $15 minimum wage pretty much anywhere, but especially not in New York or Los Angeles or Chicago or Miami or any of these big cities. It is more livable in West Virginia, and that's unfortunately the basis that we're coming from.
It is a minimum wage. Every state has the ability to raise the minimum wage in their state. You can issue, New York can issue a $20,
$30,
whatever it is. They can issue that. But the bottom line is that like we have minimal standards that are federal across the board in everything. And they're hiding the ball when they talk about this. There is a minimum wage, I have no doubt, that would be too high for West Virginia. And there's a minimum wage that would be too high for New York. That would make it impossible. But $15 an hour is not it. It is.
I'm going to guess those coal companies that they're so concerned with, the coal industry that is dying anyways, I'm going to say that they probably could afford a $15 minimum wage.
Probably, I would imagine most of these coal companies, they pay their miners more than $15 an hour. I mean, you're talking about people who work at the Piggly Wiggly down the street and stuff like this.
And who has to take out 2 extra minimum wage jobs in order to make ends meet. I mean, that is what we're talking about here. We're talking about people having one employer. Maybe they'd be better at their jobs if they weren't having to work 19-hour days and have to go work at the McDonald's and then at the Piggly Wiggly and then doing menial work at some other local area. I mean, that's the nature of the beast now. I mean,
then they would have to have insurance, and that means that the coal industry would have to provide that.
Exactly. And then they would have to supplement with Uber or whatever. It's just it's such an easy conversation, and all of his arguments rest on straw men.
Brendan wants to know if Manchin hasn't asked for some pork in the COVID relief bill. I have a feeling there'll be something, and we won't hear about it.
Yeah,
we won't hear about it. If you're in West Virginia, you'll know about it in 6 to 8 months. But I imagine there are provisions that he wants, that this is part of a negotiation, and we'll see. Calling from a 512 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Oh, is this me?
Yes. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Sam. This is Kalinsky Krat. I told you I'd be calling in regarding the
Kalinsky Krat
stuff.
Oh, my God. He's a celebrity.
He's a celebrity. He's calling in. All right. Well, you're doing great so far, man. So what's on your mind?
Well, so I wanted to call in to talk about Force the Vote. I'm moving right now, so a little nervous. Sorry.
No worries. You're doing great.
But I'm moving right now, so I've been able to torture myself and listen to all of the Force the Vote streams, the debates over the past few days.
That sounds like torture.
Revisited your debate on bad faith, which started off as putting Force the Vote to bed, but mysteriously got changed.
Well, that's a good point that I want to just sort of highlight. The title of the stream originally was Putting Force the Vote to Bed. And that is exactly how I attended that session, was that it was basically a walk down. That's what I thought it was going to be. Now, and I appreciate your noting that was what the title was before the thing, and then after it was called debate. But go ahead.
Correct. Yep, exactly. And so, I mean, my whole approach, as a viewer, and I was a supporter of Force the Vote. I saw your video, and I saw Bree's article and the Sirota conversations, and so I'm just, kind of tracking that. And my whole thing is, I think everyone who led that strategy should embrace how it was experienced on the streams. And, I think I was someone, I saw other people leaving feedback in Patreon and other places on the streams. But I think when you look at it as a whole, my perspective is it should be the town hall, for example, and the after hours on forcethevote.org. It was inviting all members of Congress, including AOC, to tune in, and I would assume organizers also to tune in. So, end product of what you're seeing there is meant to convince them to use your strategy, right? And so I thought, one of the frustrating things in tuning into that debate was, not putting it to bed, not doing like someone like Kyle Kulinski has done and saying that, hey, here's all the things we should have changed. But like it should have been a reflection of during those streams, during the debates, the town halls, the focus wasn't all of the demands that could have been called for. It wasn't leveraging, asking for committee assignments and all the stuff that, Bree and others say they supported during the whole thing, because it was never the focus. And
right. Well, your point is it was called force the vote, not leverage the vote. I mean, it was called force the vote, not force the vote for speaker. It was force a vote on Medicare for all.
Not force the pay-go.
It was not force the pay-go.
Yeah.
It was not force the committee seats. It was not force anything else. And it was not, here's the action that we want you to take. Leverage the vote, right? It wasn't that. And so, yes, I thought it was sort of ridiculous that I was being chastised for not supporting force the vote in an amended form that nobody really, it came up on a couple of streams, and it's not, like I just didn't support. It's almost even too strong a word to say I didn't support it. I was supportive of it at the beginning when it turned into what it turned into, and when it was, I was supportive of leveraging the vote, and when it turned into a mechanism in which to beat up the most progressive representatives in the House, it became toxic as far as I was concerned.
Then it became haunt the voters.
I'm not even force the vote when what you're leveraging, you don't have somebody. I'm sorry, Kulinski Kratz, so we may have a difference here. If this was a legitimate strategy, 6 months before, you would have recruited someone as an alternative to Nancy Pelosi, and then I would have supported it because there would have been an actual threat behind leveraging that vote. But with putting this together based on Jimmy Dore's unhinged rants and then creating some sort of online movement behind it within like 2 weeks, there's no there. There's nothing to leverage. And so that's the issue.
It was a publicity stunt. Let's just call it what it was. It was a publicity stunt to gain followers, to gain clout, to create division, to create followers in your supposed party. It was a publicity stunt. And, let's just look at the end result. If this was something that was viable and a great idea and we would have all gotten on board with, I'm going to guess we probably all wouldn't be arguing with each other afterwards. Right. When you actually plan, it's about building coalitions, not antagonizing people and getting Twitter clicks or whatever you're, sorry, but like that's the result is we're still talking about something that was never viable. And, if I never have to speak about this wacko strategy again, I will be better for it. I would rather go and talk to the nurses about what their strategy is to move votes on the Democratic side to a real viable path to Medicare for all and the timeline of that.
Let Kulinski Kratz talk.
Yeah, I was just thank you, Naomi. I mean, I agree. And I mean, I would say I don't want to visit this version of the quote unquote strategy, right? Like it's a strategy agreement. I want it to be better. I want us to be earlier, more prepared, considering all the, points of leverage that could be extracted at any given point. I think Ben Spielberg on one of the more productive parts of the conversations that I saw said something to the effect of, whether we should force the vote or not, whether that should be the choice shouldn't have been the most important question and arguing that point, but actually, like, what are all the possibilities and what should be, from the most parliamentary to the biggest ask, like, asking for $2,000 or $6,000 checks at that time or something like that, or asking for recurring checks. Like, what could you throw in? Could you ask for, all these things at once, committee assignments, et cetera, and then put that on, the graphic, right, on forcethevote.com and with the hashtag that was going out. Like, if that would have ever happened, then I would have been a much bigger supporter, and my thesis was you might have joined Sam. Like,
I mean, that's where I was there. That's exactly where I was at the beginning of the thing. I mean, if you go back to look at my original video on it, I said, I like the idea of leveraging the vote. I don't know if asking for a vote on Medicare for all is the proper ask. I asked around to some people. Their response was there are better things to do. I wasn't going to get involved because I saw when Ben Spielberg said that stuff and he was yelled at, and I'm like, I'm not getting near this stuff. And then when Jimmy made it about Fraud Squad, then I was like, all right, this is this is dumb. It's dumb. It's worse than
it's
dumb.
just affirming where it was going.
Exactly.
Because it was a narrow ask, a litmus test, and if they don't do it, then this is what's going to happen.
But look, the bottom line is for those people, they were touting this as some big mask off type of situation, and the irony is that I think it ended up being a mask off situation, just not for the people that they thought it would be. Because
I just want to add one more thing if I can.
Go.
Just thinking back to like this Twitter thread with Justin Jackson, which I really appreciate his perspective and how he's approached it, regardless of who he's aligned himself with, right? But like that Twitter thread, I hadn't seen. Like I'm searched and see Jimmy quote tweeting AOC in that Twitter thread, and it's not like here's all the things you can do to leverage, not trying to convince. It's like she's gaslighting us. She's paving the Pelosi, some self-unmasking, and it just goes on throughout. Anytime he complains about not having interactions with her and not listening to him, but that's what is being seen, and it continues through all of those debates. So I just don't think that's productive. It's not him. But then when when you're somebody like Bree or others bringing him on constantly during the debates or bringing him up, and now they're trolling you, saying that you brought him up and you're the reason his name was in it the whole time. But it's him, his arguments at that point.
Yeah, they didn't have to invite him onto all those freaking streams. If they thought that he was, if they thought that he was irrelevant to the process, I mean, a blind person, a deaf person, a blind and deaf person could still see how toxic he was being. Yeah. And any of them could have said, we're going to have a conversation about this and we're not going to include him. But they didn't. And then they let him just steamroll them all. And so then they complained to me about noticing that, essentially. I mean, look, the bottom line is it failed. It failed not just in convincing the progressives to do what they said. It failed in even organizing like dumb YouTubers. Right? Like, I mean, honestly, if you can't get the 10 YouTubers to agree to something, that is a failure, an abject failure. And if it doesn't even make you pause for a second to look at that and say like, hey, what can we do better next time?
The failure of the Green Party never made any of those same people ask those questions. So I don't think introspection is something we should expect from them.
And that's the bottom line. But
I think the subtext here is they didn't fail because how many clicks did they get? How much money did they get off of this? And how much division did they sow? Which might have been their intention.
Right. And which is why it took so long for that to die, right? Like forced to vote can't fail. It can only be failed. And that is basically their perspective.
And it's never their fault. It's
I appreciate the call.
It's just coffee's fault.
Thanks,
last thing, support the Michael Burt's Legacy Project. I appreciate one of the last callers bringing it up. I have it as my pinned tweet, and support TMBS on Patreon.
Great, thanks so much.
Awesome.
I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Right.
All right. Bye.
Let's see. What do we got? Oof. The Daily.
This hits a few Seder notes, I have to say.
What's this? Is this the Daily Beast thing?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So on Twitter, it's being reported by who's this? A reporter covering politics at the Daily Dot and Mediaite. That Daily Beast's motion for attorney's fees and costs was granted, leaving Fox News contributor Dan Bongino to having to pay the Daily Beast legal fees after losing a defamation case he filed against them. He is ordered to pay the Daily Beast $31,000 and $835. What was what did they supposedly defame him by? Well, they didn't fall into that trap of thinking he was drinking his own urine, was it?
I don't think so.
because that is not my understanding. Is that was just a video.
That was a Vic Berger edit, yeah.
Vic Berger representation of what Dan Bongino would metaphorically do all the time, drinking his own urine.
With lemons.
With lemons, but not really drinking.
Not really.
That's what my understanding is of it. Do we know what the defamation suit was about?
Was it calling him, was it saying his head looked like a Lego man's head?
I don't think that's defamation. I think that's an opinion.
Okay.
It was about why NRA TV canceled his show.
Ooh. And it turns out that they must have been right, or he didn't prove that they had defamed him in some fashion. Maybe we should look into that now that he's drawn so much attention to it. I mean, he's paid $31,000 to. Federal judge granted the Daily Beast motion to dismiss a defamation lawsuit filed by the former Secret Service member and former NRA TV show host Dan Bongino. This is according to court documents. Judge Jose Martinez wrote that the suit ran afoul of Florida's anti-SLAPP strategic lawsuit against public participation statute, finding it fails to state a claim for defamation. Wow. And was filed without merit. Whew. Bongino filed a $15 million suit against the Daily Beast in December, alleging that related claims over a 2018 story documenting the end of NRTV, the We Stand, which came as the gun rights organization downsized. It's not a crybaby snowflake thing, Bongino said when he filed the suit. I mean, it turns out that the judge more or less said in a legal, in legalese, this is a crybaby snowflake thing.
Is it because Daily Beast they're based in Florida? Like where in Florida was this? I'm just curious.
I wonder if Bongino was based in Florida and that's why he filed there. I mean, Bongino would, if Bongino's in Florida, he could do it there. Let's go to the IMs. Penny from New Mexico. This morning, listening to Emma teasing Sam about being in her contract that she'd eventually not have to work in person with Sam again. I had the thought that Michael would have likely chuckled and appreciated Emma being in her new role at MR. Rest in power, Michael, indeed.
Of course.
And thank you, Emma. I love you. I love all you bring to the show.
It's a very sweet comment. Thank you very much. And yes, it's also sweet, obviously, to say about Michael.
Yes, I'm sure he would have loved to hear me crapped on. That would have been. Now you just got to get the accent down.
Yeah.
I've noticed that among some of my friends, says the Tim Caucus, that agree with leftist policies, it's hard for them to imagine anything can ever improve, especially on climate and economic prospects for people in their 20s. I'm a DSA member, and I try to explain why we have any hope and why I organize it, but it's difficult to put into words. Any advice how to convey why it's important to fight, even when it seems hopeless? I mean, it is hard when you have a short time horizon to look at, to appreciate how progress has happened. On the other hand, it's good because that's how progress happens. The fact that younger people have a shorter time horizon, and are not satisfied with the pace of change is what I think very often drives the pace of change in our society. And, other than to just keep telling people that sometimes it goes slower, sometimes it goes faster, but it heads, for the most part, in the right direction. I think there is, a sense, particularly when you look at things like white supremacy and racism and misogyny that came to the fore under Trump, that it sort of like we're going backwards. But I think that's a mistake. In assessment, I think that no, we're at where we are. There are times where things get louder. I think what we're witnessing now is actually sort of like not necessarily the last throes, but of this is what happens when there's a genuine threat to things like that, white supremacy, and I think that's also true to some extent in terms of plutocracy and economic disparity. I don't know. I think sometimes this stuff is generational, and it takes a while, but there has been progress. I mean, it's hard to sort of say like, hey, you get a Democratic Party that is not getting into office and we don't have to worry that they're going to cut Social Security. Like, that's what happened with the Obama administration. On day one, we were afraid they were going to cut Social Security. That is not a worry now. And it's not like, that doesn't mean you have to invest in the Democratic Party. I don't suggest that. What I'm saying is that we were able to discipline the Democratic Party enough that there's no cuts to cut Social Security on the table. And there's not going to be. And that's...
Well, Neera Tanden doesn't have the best track record with that. And she's literally overseeing that. But I mean, I hear what you're saying, Sam. But I do think that, what maybe the younger folks who were not around to watch the Obama administration, or even people in my generation had to do in recognizing the evolution of the neoliberal class, is that there are lessons to be learned. I mean, there was a conscious effort to switch the party's strategy and focus and makeup in the late 70s as unions were under attack. So there is a more awareness of race and class and gender. And this is really important. And we're not fighting much of the same cultural wars as we were over the last 20, 30 years. Doesn't mean that it's gone. Obviously, we just had a coup. But simultaneously, wages are lower than ever. Economic inequality, unions are weaker than they've ever been. But there is a resurgence. And so I think as long as we pivot as a group, as if we are living through one of these moments, we pivot and address the key issues. And I think that's what's so wonderful about people organizing and joining unions now in record numbers. And that's how we fight back. So we don't make the same mistakes we did, from the late 70s into today.
Yeah. And I think it's important to remind people of those positives that you talked about to keep people from getting too despairing. I mean, that's really the point, right? I mean, Chardonnay Socialist just gave a few bucks to John Fetterman's Pennsylvania Senate campaign and ordered some merch. Curious if any of you fine MR folks have specific opinions on him. We may have more on that next week. We'll see.
Yeah, I have opinions. Happy to talk about them next week.
Sam Cedar's smelly armpits. Tulsi going on Crowder was the logical conclusion to her story arc. Oh, did she go on Crowder?
Yes, it's the best thing that's ever happened.
What?
Yeah, she went on Crowder to talk about why trans kids suck,
What?
Yeah. Yeah, she went on. She's been on
she's been making the rounds.
Yeah, wait, what was it? The Humanist Report tweeted it out in the last few weeks. I'm finding it. She's been on Tucker to talk about the left will stop at nothing to silence dissent. That's the Chiron. Then on Laura Ingraham, Tulsi Gabbard said Pelosi needs to apologize to Americans. Then she went on Crowder, and then of course she went on Rubin. I love this shit.
How do you justify going
happy.
on Steven Crowder's show?
You can't. Now she's on his Dave Rubin's alternative platform, right? The what's it called?
Oh, she's got to forget it's called
Friend's House or something like that.
Locals. She's a locals. She's a local.
I get it now.
Okie.
She's just doing the podcast hustle. Pod fraud.
It's just
fraud pod. Fraud pod. Fraud pod. Hashtag fraud pod.
Fuck all of those people that went after me and Anna specifically so hard about saying Tulsi was terrible. I mean, seriously. It's just I love being vindicated, and it's a fun time for me.
MIDI Doctors. Hey, Sam, remember to tell everyone to hit the like button and subscribe. Hit the like button and subscribe, everybody. Phil from Boston. Hey, you. Why don't you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel to see more progressive political interviews and commentary. Prairie Fire Kowalski. This is a long one, bud. Hey, Sam and Emma, Nomi, MR crew, all the ships at sea. So I woke up in broken water line in my bathroom, which flooded a hall and a spare bedroom. I'm sorry to hear that. Replacing a subfloor today with a high temperature of 5 degrees that I planned on doing in a couple of weeks. Thank goodness I have the majority report carpentry pencils.
Oh, wow.
Motivation, or I'd be looking over my fire insurance policy. Speaking of disasters, I want to let you know about some of the emails I've been receiving for the upcoming state GOP meeting. Apparently, the two top priorities are to denounce the election fraud that stole the election and to censure Ben Sasse for being critical of Trump's role in the insurrection. I guess we're not pro Blue Lives Matter anymore. Hopefully this meeting will clear this up. Never thought I'd be in a position where defending Sasse would be the lesser of two evils, but here we are. It'll be interesting to see how far Q has grown in the last 2.5 years. The last time I went around to the state county meetings, it was more conservative libertarian, but lately it looks like a cult trying to keep the abusive leader happy. Definitely not going to be eating or drinking anything while I'm there. Can't wait to convince these people to be neutral on BLM, pro Medicare for all, get a statewide $15 minimum wage. If you don't hear from me after Saturday, just assume that I went out swinging, and to honor my memory by funding the Nomiki Show's coffee fund that left its best.
Kowalski, you gotta sneak in cameras and recording equipment to this experience, because if you don't, you at least need a documentary out of it. I will edit it for free.
Love it.
Lavender Town. Do the IMs crash on you sometimes? Because sometimes I'll IM and they won't be there. Yeah, no, I don't know. Emma Astrology. Great episode of the Nomiki Show last Wednesday on Joe Manchin's role in the Senate. Everyone go back and check it out if you haven't. Also, Sam, if Tom Brady is the GOAT, then so is Robert Horry.
Thank you, Emma's Astrology. Emma, what sign are you?
I'm an Aries.
Oh, that makes sense.
All right, this guy's long argument about Tom Brady for Emma.
It's okay. Look, I'm willing to. I was a little emotional yesterday after losing a lot of money. Not a lot, but a lot for me in terms of what I used to bet. Like I some seasons I'd like quadruple my money on like $30, $40 bets, but I went really hard on the Chiefs. And so I made it. Look, I get that most people are going to say he's the GOAT, and that's okay. And I think that I can be convinced. I just, it's yeah.
Putting Tom Brady to bed, I think.
Let's just put it to bed. Because I do. Look, my argument rests in a lot of what ifs, right? What if Aaron Rodgers was on the Patriots? I do think they'd win more championships. But I can never prove that. So
I hope you can hear. I hope you can hear Matt taking time code, because we're going to cut this up.
No,
we're
don't
putting
cut
out
it
a
up.
bunch of 60 seconds videos. I'm going to put on.
I don't want that.
Slam you.
Don't do that.
Slam you.
That's
Tom Brady hypocrisy. Some Brady crocracy.
What?
No, I just made that up.
Some Brady crocus. I was like, I didn't understand fully what the word was.
Yeah, I know I made that.
Okay.
Bad takes pod. The Democrats don't know how to wield power, and the progressive left seems to have no idea how to gain power. Trolling online and political stunts concocted during happy hour Zoom calls does nothing and gets us nothing. Jewish space laser. Remember when Matt Stoller said to you, Israel's vaccine rollout had been great as long as you ignore the Palestinians? Good times. I mean, to be fair, I don't think that's the point. I think his argument was just like in terms of like sort of operationally. Now, with that said, if you decide it's like charter schools, if you decide you're not going to provide services for the most underserved people, then things get a little bit easier because you don't have any infrastructure. We're just going to ignore that part of it. But I get his point. Let's see. Gay frog caller, Sam's bidet. Jimmy Dore acolytes Fiorella, Isabel, and Greg Pasta have embraced the nickname Fash Squad. Don't listen to anyone saying calling these people out is a waste of time. Abshkik. Senator Mike Lee arguing on Fox News regarding Trump that everyone makes mistakes. Everybody's entitled to a mulligan. Yeah, I heard that. Lefty McGee, I also want to... this is the park ranger from last week. Would love to chat about union organizing in regards to that. Calling from a 415 area code. Also want to share my story getting denied unemployment benefits. Great example of horrors of mean testing. I don't know that we have time for any more calls, folks. I'm sorry about that. We took a bunch of calls today, though. Sorry, we don't have time for calls. Horton's packed court. Speaking of butt-based love stories, please, why do we got to do that?
What?
Like literally, like junior high, but 15 years ago, 20 years ago.
I don't even get it. What?
Everyone go check out Charlie Kirk's I'm Engaged YouTube video. For the small-faced chump we love to dump on, do yourselves a favor and watch all 30 minutes of cringe for that not-so-fresh feeling you get throughout the day. Turning Poops USA. Okay.
I hate that.
Cody
I'm
Punk
sorry,
Possums.
I am or I love you, but I hate that.
As horrible as the Republicans are on the insane side of the schism, the loudest and most effective Trumpists among them, such as Gorka and Stone, are actively discouraging third-party politics because they know the Republican Party is trending in their direction. Oh, without a doubt. Perigulum, I was just bumped off the phones. Sorry about that. I don't know what to tell you. I just hung up the phones. Area Man, splitting the Republican into establishment and Q wing is unlikely, but if it happened, there would be a massive fight into the Q party. Flight. Oh, without a doubt. Libertarian in Recovery. Loved the interview yesterday. Mark Elaine always has some fantastic insights, and I've shared it with several family members confused by the vaccines and the new strains, excited for his next appearance. Yeah, he's terrific. All right, we'll do 5 more of these. South, what do we got? Last IM of the day, he's the second congressman to die from COVID. First sitting congressman, Luke Letlow, died of coronavirus in late December. First.
I don't think he was he sworn in?
No.
That guy?
Yeah, he was elected to be, and then he... So yeah. He was a congressman-elect.
A squared. Wow, that was all the kitchen sink. Agree with Emma that Ingram's speech was scary. Goebbels good. Guess we all know what the narrative at Fox will be for the next few years. Sam, the water hack story is very scary. Yeah, we're going to talk about that tomorrow. It's just so disappointing to see Glenn Greenwald and other folks like Brianna where they are at. Glenn attack of AOC was sad. It's like they've become so bitter and the rage so misdirected. Ironic they're not arguing in good faith. I got the sense that Virgil was not fully supportive. Will Bree come on, MR? I invited her away back. I don't know that I'd invite her back, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't think that's a good idea.
I mean, I'm not worried about it, and I guess I would just keep it open, just for the sake of it. If she wants to come on, sure, she can come on, absolutely.
Yeah, good work is good work. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, the Glenn thing is sad. I think Rancid Tarzi was right. Let me just leave it at that. Maybe there'll be 5 people who know what I'm talking about.
I don't know.
Shore Rap. My tribe just opened up the Moderna shots to everyone 18 and up, and I was able to get the first one just now. Can I get a shofar for our tribal governments? They've been the best organizations during this pandemic. Vaping goldfish. Antifa did kill one person. It was an important story because that was the extrajudicial murder Trump highlighted to his supporters. Oh, that's right. And that guy, there was some question as to whether, why did they shoot that guy without even giving him a chance to, there was some other story to that. Militant apathy. Just had the second shot of the vaccine. Talking to the nurse, she confirmed there are quite a few nurses she knows won't take it. I think it's Facebook, dude. That shit is toxic. Brady is not the GOAT. Tampa has had more defensive first-round picks than Chiefs playing in that game. Offense wins games. Defense wins championships.
I'm just moving along.
All right, 2 more. God Cat. Hey, crew, need organizer with global reach to help on... with a proposal, unions, co-ops, governments, community orgs to microfinance, global land trust, general strike. Tweet at, send us an email, and maybe we'll try and hook you up with Twitter. I don't know how else to do that. And the final IM of the day, ladies and gentlemen, Kevin N.M. Still don't like Brady. Nomi, check out Nomi's show, just starting in 28 minutes, ladies and gentlemen.
28 minutes.
Great lineup today. Good job, Emma. Good job, Brendan. Good job, Matt. See you folks tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar.